So, see that lamp burning in the back corner there? Who knows what that's for? Steven, go ahead.
It indicates that the body of Christ is in the sanctuary.
Yeah, the body of Christ is in the sanctuary. Now, if any of you grew up Catholic like me, that was a very literal thing. The holy consecrated bread and wine are here. But in Anglicanism, in the Episcopal Church, we see it as that. We honor the presence of the Holy Sacrament, but also it indicates to us that God is here, and present. And it goes right back to the practice of the ancient temple in Jerusalem that had oil lamps that burned all the time, saying the same thing. God's here. God is present. Well, apparently that's not actually obvious to everyone, even though a lot of us were able to raise our hands here. This week, there was a user group in here, and they had come to the end of their time of using the space, and they needed to shut things down, and they were really distressed because they couldn't figure out how to turn off that light. It just wasn't having it. They were so worried that they draw in one of our upstairs renters who happened to be downstairs, and between this group and this upstairs renter, they're like, we cannot figure out how to turn this light off. And, so they ended up leaving it lit. But the next day, the renter approached me and he's like, what's that light about and why can't we turn it off? So I explained it to him. This is the season of Epiphany, and it's the time when we celebrate just that. The shining presence of God manifest in the person of Jesus. Each January and February, depending on how long our Epiphany season is, we take time to read through stories about some of the first ways that people began to meet God through Jesus. That they saw that light that said, God is here. Now, in these stories, people start to notice there's something about this Jesus guy. Only it wasn't always obvious. It wasn't always obvious that what it meant and who this person was. They just sort of could see there was something going on there. Now, some people were able to take it on board right away. But most people needed time. They had to ask questions. They had to process what they were experiencing. Come find someone and say, what's this about? What's this about? Because every person responds differently when the presence of God is there before them. I mean, what do you do? What do you do when God says something like, I'm gonna make your ears tingle? Or when Jesus says, you ain't seen nothing yet, so come and see. So first, we go back to Samuel. Now, Samuel, he's just a kid, right? He's probably, I like to think, about the same age as Harry Potter was when he got that letter that told him, guess what? You're a wizard. 11, 12-ish, that last few years of just before adolescence, when kids are really having the world open up to them in ways that they just never imagined before. So the thing about Samuel is he sleeps in the temple right underneath those lamps and the Ark of the Presence, right? Right in the place where ancient Judaism said was where God sits on earth. So you know what? You'd think he'd know. You think he'd expect God to start talking to him in that place. But, he's clearly confused. Now, to be fair, it's the middle of the night. He was probably woken up in deep sleep. You know how it is when you wake up kids and they're like, right? We've all done that, right? But he's also not looking for it. Even though he's in the one place where you would expect him to, his low blame cannot take on board the possibility that it could be anybody else but Eli calling out for him. Now, do you get the feeling that God's kind of having fun playing with him? 3 times. I mean, maybe Samuel's in on the game, but 3 times before Samuel finally tells him, you know what? I think that's God. You should say to him, here I am, and listen to him. Samuel needs his mentor to walk him through what's going on and what to expect. And think about it, how many of us may have needed a family member or a close friend or some other spiritual mentor in our lives to help us recognize some of the ways that God's showing up for us? I mean, it may have been a time of crisis or despair, a time when we needed some guidance in our lives, or maybe when there was something completely miraculous that was just staring us right in the face, but we were not seeing. I think it's pretty common. I mean, you would think that divine manifestation would be obvious, like, wow, there it is. But
Yep.
I don't know. I'm wondering if we should turn off the...
No.
I think it's water or wind or something.
Oh, no, there's a person out there.
No,
who's-
there's something in the back. Yeah. Shut the door.
Yeah, I think it's the, is it the mic that's bugging people?
Yeah,
Okay,
it was.
I'm gonna turn it off.
Oh, yeah, that is it.
Just use the other microphone.
Well, let's see if that works. But I think the noise is in the system. Anyway,
Okay.
let's try. Sorry about that.
It's a technology brand. When it works.
All right, so divine manifestation, you would expect it to be really obvious. But it's the kind of thing that sometimes we can see it easier when it's happening to someone else than when it's our own ears that are the ones that are tingling. I mean, in that story of Samuel, I kind of wonder if God's actually been trying to talk to Eli for a long time, and Eli has been missing it, because he's clearly got some stuff that he needs to deal with in his family, and he hasn't figured that out yet. So, in our gospel reading, just before it, we hear that Jesus has just called Andrew and Simon. And the version that we get in John's gospel is kind of different from what you get from other gospels. And we didn't get to hear that part because our lectionary really chops up John. We get the other 3 gospels in nice sequential order across chunks of the season, but John, they just gets popcorned in all over all 3 years. So we don't get that. I want to work with kind of the whole episode. Now, you get the sense, if you read it, in John's account of the calling of Jesus' disciples, that there must have been obvious spiritual manifestations going on around Jesus, because John the Baptist, he could see it. And Andrew in this gospel is specifically said to be a disciple of John the Baptist first. But either Andrew wasn't there on that day when John said, hey, there he is. This is the Son of God. I saw a dove and the Spirit coming into him. So the next day, John has to point it out specifically to Andrew. See that guy over there? He's the one I've been telling you about all along. Well, Andrew, kind of like Samuel, trusts his mentor and decides to check out Jesus more closely. Only it sounds like he's kind of hanging back, not so sure, because Jesus has to stop and turn around and kind of be like, why are you following me? Only Jesus says it better than that, because he's Jesus. He says, what are you looking for? great question, right? To hear from Jesus. What are you looking for? Andrew still doesn't know how to answer. He's says, well, if you tell me where you at, I might swing by sometime. But Jesus isn't going to let him get away from watching from the sidelines, and he invites him in, says, come and see. Well, even then, Andrew still seems a little bit hesitant, which, you know what, that's a lot of us, right? We're not sure if we're ready to face God one-on-one. So he says, let me go get my brother, Simon, first. And he's not afraid to tell his brother, I've seen God's anointed one, so let's go. He kind of needed someone to go with him. I mean, think about it. We all need spiritual companions in our walk of faith, don't we? Okay, so we now got into the part of the gospel that we got to hear today, and it's kind of the best part of the story for us because this is our Philip, future saint, Saint Philip, the apostle, right? This is his origin story of the namesake of our church. And the great thing about Philip is that he doesn't need any of the rigmarole. He doesn't need an introduction. Jesus just finds him and he says, follow me, and that's all it takes. Philip is on board. I love it. It's a great thing to aspire to. I'm not sure that I have that kind of courage, but I love Philip's example. And I think that's what's great is that when I see Philip, I need a Philip around me because I'm actually more like his buddy Nathaniel. I tend to bring a lot of skepticism to these moments first. I want to ask questions. You know, you've probably figured that out about me. Anyway, Philip goes and he tells Nathaniel who he's met. And Nathaniel's immediate response is, that can't be right, because why would God incarnate be walking around dressed like a fisherman from that backwater town? I mean, he expects God, to come, from Jerusalem, from the temple, the holy seat. He should be very high and mighty. But Nathaniel's not having it. And somehow Philip must be really persuasive because he says, come and see for yourself. And of all the people who have shown up in front of Jesus, I think he looks at Nathaniel and he can kind of see what's going on there. He must have that sort of, the prove it stance. We've all seen that, right? And Jesus looks at him right away and he says, in attempt to put him at ease, Nathaniel, calm down, I see you. Nathaniel keeps pushing back though, because he's like, how do you even know me, Jesus? Well, Jesus realizes I got to be obvious with this guy. I got to be obvious with this guy to prove that he's always known him and that this is God's own son standing right in front of Nathaniel. I have to imagine Nathaniel's ears, they weren't just tingling by this point, they had to have been positively vibrating, don't you think? But I also have to admit that if I look back over my life, sometimes it takes me years and years to hear what God is saying to me. So I really relate to the guy. So Eli, Samuel, Andrew, Peter, Philip, and Nathaniel, 6 people, 6 epiphanies. Each of them different in how they've been perceived, processed, and accepted. God showed up for all of them. God patiently waited for each of them to get there in their own time. And then God promises each and every one of them, you ain't seen nothing yet, because I have plans for you. So, see that picture on the front of your bulletin? It's a little tiny close-up of a fresco that's on the outside of a monastery church in Romania. Color, bright, imagine it really brightly colored, and these angels times like 1,000. There's a lot of them flitting across the side of this building on the outside there for all to see. And it's a depiction of that little, that story of heaven cracking open that Jesus tells us right at the end of the gospel. Now, this church is incredible. You're shaking your head, Stephen, like maybe you've been there?
No.
No, but you've heard of it.
But I've seen it.
You've seen it, okay.
Right.
I've never heard of this place before. It is now officially on my bucket list of something I really want to see. Because there are so many angels and messengers of God covering the whole side of the church. And it's not just every outward-facing wall of the building. If you walk around it, that whole side is this depiction, but keep going and there's more angels and more saints and more depictions of the life of Jesus, and then depictions of other parts of the Bible. And it looks like they eventually got, I don't know if they did the inside first and they ran out of space and did the outside, or if they did the outside first, but they're everywhere. And it just kind of feels like it's saying God is so manifest for all to see all the time, all over the place, that you don't even have to walk inside this holy place to witness it. It's obvious and out there for all of us to see. So you know what? Pay attention. Pay attention. So I think my takeaway for today is it's up to each and every one of us how we answer that question from Jesus. What do you want? Each of us works it out in our own time, and we know when we're ready to come and see. And God's showing us all the time. I'm here with you. I know you. And I've got something incredible in store for you. So, are your ears tingling?